When it comes to Thanksgiving, stuffing is my absolute favorite dish. My go-tos are generally a focaccia bread or cornbread stuffing with Italian sausage, but every now and then I like to change it up and make Ina Garten's herb and apple bread pudding. It is very similar to stuffing. It has a nice crispy top, but it's soft and buttery in the center. It fancies up your Thanksgiving table a little bit. And I think it's just a perfect accompaniment to any turkey. Hi, my name's Nancy. Welcome back to Nancy's Homestyle Kitchen, where I show you how to cook real food with real ingredients and no pressure to be perfect. As you could see before me, I have quite a few ingredients, but don't let that scare you. These are actually very simple ingredients. Let me go over them with you. This is 1 loaf of French bread that I trim the crusts off. I cut them into 3/4 inch cubes and I cooked them in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes till they were nice and crispy and golden brown. I have 2 stalks of celery, which is about 1.5 cups. I have 1 whole yellow onion, and it was a larger onion, but it made the 2 cups that we need for this recipe. The recipe also calls for 3 ounces of pancetta, and Ina uses a pancetta that is a 1/2 inch dice. Well, where I live, I can't find pancetta like that, so at my local Trader Joe's, they have these little packs, and it is 4 ounces. So it's a little bit more, but because it's a finer dice on the pancetta, we'll just cook it a little bit differently, and I'll go over that with you. I have 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 2 cups of heavy cream. In this bowl, I have 5 cracked eggs. The recipe also calls for 2 cups of grated Gruyère cheese. I just picked up 1 6-ounce block of Gruyère at the grocery store. The Gruyère is actually probably the most expensive thing in here. I think this is about $7. And I may not have 2 cups, but I'm fine with it. That's just what I'm gonna use. I'm also gonna use 1 cup of chicken stock. This is actually leftover turkey stock from when I did my Instant Pot turkey breast. So be sure to go watch that video because it is quick and delicious. I have some rosemary, a Granny Smith apple, some Italian parsley, salt, pepper, and sherry. All of the measurements for the ingredients will be listed in the description box. And as I'm adding them to the dish as we go along the cooking process, I'll be sure to recap those so you have everything that you need. So the bread I've already toasted, but the next step in the process is we need to go over to the stove, melt the butter, and saute some of the vegetables, the apple, and the pancetta. So let's head over to the stove and I'll show you what I'm doing. To my frying pan, I'm melting 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. To that, I need 2 cups of chopped yellow onion, which was 1 large yellow onion, and 1.5 cups of chopped celery, which was 2 stalks. Finally, 1 Granny Smith apple, peeled and chopped. I'm going to saute those for a few minutes, add the 4 ounces of that diced pancetta that I spoke about earlier, and just go ahead and saute that till it's nice and translucent. Now I'm adding the 1/2 cup of dry sherry. You could also use bourbon, 2 tablespoons of minced fresh rosemary leaves, salt and pepper to taste. And then finally, I'm going to finish with 1/2 cup of chopped fresh parsley. Okay, the veggies are done, so they're just sitting on the stove, and now we need to make the custard. So this is a tip. Sometimes recipes will tell you to put the eggs, the cream, the milk, whatever, all in a bowl and then whip it. Well, I find I'm always like chasing the egg yolks around and all of that liquid. So just beat them ahead of time to get them broken up, and it's so much easier to incorporate the other ingredients. So this was 5 eggs. This is 1 cup of our homemade turkey stock. You could just use chicken broth. That's fine, use what you have. And then 2 cups of heavy cream. Okay. This bowl barely fits my bread. So I know it's not going to be big enough to toss all of my ingredients. So I'm going to dump the 8 cups of 3/4 inch toasted breadcrumbs into the bowl. This is a loaf of French bread. It was $1.47 at the grocery store. I'm sure you could probably use sourdough if you make sourdough bread. That would be really good. But today we're just using French bread. I think Ina's recipe calls for country bread. Here's all of our beautiful sauteed vegetables and herbs. Sorry, you're not gonna be able to see this, but we're going to put all but a half a cup of the cheese in here because we wanna save the rest of that cheese to sprinkle on top. If you don't like Gruyere, you could use Swiss or Jack cheese, just whatever you like. So I'm gonna save the rest of the cheese in here and then just pour the custard mixture over all of that. And then I know this is not the greatest bowl for showing you all what's going on, so hopefully this camera over here can catch it, but you get the point. I'm just tossing everything to coat. And that's what's nice about having this big bowl is I'm not sitting here trying to balance all the, putting up a shield so my bread cubes don't fly out and all that business. I've been there before. It's just not fun. Everything is nicely incorporated into the bowl. So now you have two options. You can either directly pour this into a buttered 9x13, cover it with foil, stick it in the refrigerator, and cook it tomorrow. But we're gonna cook it here in just a little bit. So I'm just gonna let it hang out here in this bowl for 30 minutes and let the bread kind of soak up that custard base. Then I'll give it one final stir, put it into the casserole dish, and then pop it in the oven. So while I'm waiting for this to rest, I'm gonna go ahead and get my oven preheated. I think it's 350, but I will verify, and then we'll be back. It's been 30 minutes, and I have come over and stirred the bread cubes around a couple times during the process. And as you'll see here, when I dump it into this buttered 9x13 pan, it has pretty much soaked up most of the custard. And just spread it around evenly. It smells so good. And it's like I could smell the rosemary and the sherry cooking wine. It smells great. Okay. And here is our reserved Gruyere cheese. Sprinkle that across the top. And this will help it get nice and crusty. Now all that's left to do is bake it. So the oven is preheated to 350 degrees. I did verify that. So I'm gonna pop it in the oven for 45 to 50 minutes until a knife inserted into the center comes out clean and the top is golden brown. So I will show you that, what it looks like when it's all ready to go. We are done. It took about 50 minutes for it to cook enough to where I put the tip of the knife into the center of the dish and it came out clean, so I know the custard is set. It's been sitting here for about 10 minutes and now it's ready for us to cut into. So it is, if you can see, it is nice and crispy. Let me see how hot it is. Let's cut into it. I don't know if you can hear that through my microphone, but that top is definitely crispy, and it just, as soon as the knife cuts through that crispy top, you can feel how soft it is below. Here we go, and it comes out in one nice piece. And it smells heavenly. So let's give it a try. You can see the celery and the little pancetta cubes in there. It's a little cheesy from the Gruyere. That is just so good. And even though she calls it bread pudding, it It totally tastes like stuffing, and it looks like stuffing to me. So I'm gonna try part of this crispy top. You definitely get the notes of the rosemary, the parsley, the onions and celery. A little bit of the sherry is kind of in the background, not overpowering at all. And the cheese actually isn't really overpowering either. This is definitely one of my favorite recipes, and I should just make it more often. I've had the recipe in my box for years, thanks to Ina, and somehow I just skip past it and I go to my tried and true cornbread and sausage, but this one I think I'm gonna make more often. So anyway, I hope you guys give this a try. The link to Ina's recipe will be in the description box. I pretty much followed it to a T with the exception of the pancetta that I told you about, and I did reduce the salt because in my experience, some of her recipes are a little heavy on the salt for me, and I'm trying to cut that back. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you like this content, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing, and I will be back next week with another recipe from my kitchen.